Turning now to Canada, where the man set to become the country's next Prime Minister is striking a defiant tone in the face of threats from the US President. Former central banker Mark Carney was elected on Sunday as the Liberal Party's leader and successor to Justin Trudeau. Among the biggest issues he'll face, growing tensions between Canada and its southern neighbour. On Sunday, he slammed the Trump administration's tariff plans and vowed to keep retaliatory tariffs on the US until, quote, the Americans show us respect.
America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. Look, we didn't ask for this fight. We didn't ask for this fight. But Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
His comments coming as the US President ramps up his trade war and calls for Canada to become the 51st state. In an interview that aired Sunday, Mr. Trump said tariffs on some goods from Canada planned for April 2nd, quote, could go up. CNN's Paula Newton is following developments from Ottawa.
Mark Carney's win was overwhelming.
In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney.
But all eyes are now on the contest to come. As Canada's Prime Minister designate, Carney will be sworn in within days and will likely call for a national election within weeks. Carney is calling for national unity to better face the challenge of the Trump administration and its threat to the Canadian economy.
Right now, all Canadians are being asked to serve in their own ways. We're all being called to stand up for each other and for the Canadian way of life. So let me ask you, who's ready?
Carney is a political novice, a former central bank governor in both Canada and England, a former investment banker with Goldman Sachs, an economist with a hockey goalie pedigree from his days at Harvard. But in the election, he will face conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, a career politician backed by a trending social media presence and the praise of MAGA allies after cutting attacks like this.
Working for Trudeau, Carney made Canada weaker and poorer. Working for himself, Carney made the United States richer and stronger.
President Donald Trump's tariff and annexation threats have reframed the Canadian election in just a matter of weeks, with a rising nationalism and rising popularity for the Liberal Party. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was forced to announce his resignation in January as he grew ever more unpopular. But his Liberal Party has since been reborn with new purpose.
This is a nation-defining moment. Democracy is not a given. Freedom is not a given. Even Canada is not a given.
Those are some of Trudeau's final words as Prime Minister. His successor promises to take on that fight.
Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him.
But for weeks already, the Conservatives have been portraying Carney as weak in the face of the American threat.
Trump wants our jobs.
We're going to take other countries' jobs.
And Mark Carney is just the man to help him.
Canadians will now take the measure of Carney's vast economic experience, both in Canada and abroad, and will weigh which leader and party is best able to stand up to the American threat. Paula Newton, CNN, Ottawa.
While Canada's eventual new prime minister is vowing to win a trade war with the U.S., Trump administration officials argue that the tariffs are actually fighting a drug war. They say fentanyl is the reason for the tariffs.
We launched a drug war, not a trade war, and it was part of a negotiation to get Canada and Mexico to stop shipping fentanyl across our borders.
If fentanyl ends, I think these will come off. But if fentanyl does not end or he's uncertain about it, they will stay this way until he is comfortable.
You're saying this really is about fentanyl?
It really is about fentanyl. It really is.
It's worth noting that in the last fiscal year, U.S. border authorities have taken a total of 43 pounds of fentanyl at the Canadian border. That's less than 1% of all fentanyl seized at U.S. borders. Joining me now to talk about all this, Alex Thompson, CNN political analyst and national political reporter at Axios. Ashley Allison, CNN political commentator and former director of the Biden-Harris campaign. And Doug Heye, Republican strategist. Thank you all. Welcome to the group chat. I'm going to start with Alex. I love the weekends because when you come in, you hear everybody's talking points from Sunday, one after another. What does it mean that they're moving this conversation in this direction?
Well, some of this is about legal justification for it because
Say that again, legal justification?
Yes, because in order for Trump to have the power to unilaterally do these sort of wide tariffs, you have to have sort of a national security or a security rationale for it. That is why they keep talking. I mean, I think they do have a real policy agenda here, but some of it also is the legal justification.
Okay, Doug, what I'm hearing is this is not cosmetic. I'm coming to you first. Ashley, I'm not forgetting you, but I'm coming to you first because obviously your experience at the RNC, you're a guy who knows about message and how to talk about something publicly. So when you see flooding the zone with drug war, not trade war, what do you hear?
It tells you there's been pushback and they're trying to find new ways to talk about it. And to Alex's point, it's legal. It's also political. That's why we saw the 3 cabinet members all saying the exact, not sort of things, the exact same words. We're going to hear fentanyl more and more, regardless of what those numbers are. Clearly, fentanyl is coming in massive numbers from the Mexican border. I just crossed the border, did the land crossing over the summer, and you can see just when you're just 10 feet over on the Mexico side or 100 yards on the Mexico side, you can see these kinds of products being sold. That's just not true in Canada. But the political argument's going to remain because they have to make the political argument to make the legal argument.
To be clear, there are fentanyl labs in Canada. That is not necessary. We're not saying they don't exist. We're saying we're not talking about the organized industry that you might see coming out of Mexico. Actually, I remember the Biden-Harris folks during the term really struggling to talk about the border in a way that connected with people, saying we're doing something. So how are you thinking about this now? You know what I mean? What is the, not counter, but what is the argument that could be taken advantage of in this moment?
Well, I think if you consider the Canadian border and the Mexican border, those are, I just feel like 2 different stories to be told. The reason why Republicans right now are using fentanyl as a distraction almost to what is happening with the tariffs on is because you seem insensitive if you say fentanyl is not an issue when we know that people die from drug overdoses in this country. So we're smart enough as Americans to bifurcate the issue of tariffs and the need to have policies in place and protect people from overdosing from fentanyl. So I would encourage the Democrats not to take the bait here, and counter and be compassionate to folks who are experiencing drug crises in their communities while also saying we want eggs to be cheaper.
Okay, so we are not just nerds into tariffs. I mean, we are, but we're not just nerds into tariffs. I want to play for you something that the president said over the weekend about whether or not the U.S. should expect a recession.
But are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us.
Jump ball on great for us or a period of transition? Which phrase strikes your fancy?
Well, this was a case in which the talking points were not all in unison because you had Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on Meet the Press predicting that there would not be a recession. And so they were not...
Like categorically, it'll be tape played back to you later if it turns out the other way.
But they've all sort of said that they expect the tariffs to be disruptive. But this is also what they ran on. And they believe that, you know, given the last 30 years of what they call like sort of the hollowing out of the industrial base, that this is about trying to get back to that or address that.
I think they ran on tariffs, but I don't think they ran on a bit of a disturbance. I think that, and so I know they didn't, because if they would have, Kamala Harris would have counted them on it, right?
Same way,
and so when people like myself and other folks were saying, watch out, cats, this might not land the way you expect it to land, we were told that we didn't know anything about economic policy.